In a realm where dreams are spun from threads of magic and stars murmur the secrets of achievement, there stands a castle of knowledge, aglow under the moon's gentle light. Within its towering spires, the pages of texts spring to life, their words swirling through the air like ethereal melodies. Nestled within these walls of wisdom resides a venerable sage, the illustrious master, Harry A. Lewis. Step into this enchanted world, where paths are illuminated by fulfilled wishes and rivers flow with the very essence of triumph. On this journey, it will not be compasses or maps that guide us, but the strength of the mind and the power of a success-oriented mindset. Prepare for the adventure of a lifetime. Join us as we delve into the secrets of the mind, unveil the mysteries of success, and stretch the limits of what is achievable. On this grand voyage, you will uncover that the true treasure lies within you, ready to be revealed by the right mindset. So take my hand, let your dreams lead the way, and together, let's embark on this thrilling quest toward the success mindset of Harry A. Lewis. Success and failure, young one. Before you lie two paths in life. One leads to degradation and need, the other to usefulness and wealth. In the ancient Greek races, only one could win the prize by any means possible, but in the transcendent race of human life, the prize can be won by more than one. No one is barred from competing. Everyone can succeed provided they follow the right methods. Life is not a lottery, as its prizes are not distributed at random. There can be no greater insensitivity, if not presumption, than that of so many young men and women who, when embarking on life, conclude that it is useless to set a direction, and who then make a determined effort to reach a worthy goal while blindly drifting with the current of circumstances. Is it surprising that those who set no goals achieve nothing in life? One cannot expect a different outcome. 20 salespeople in a store, 20 apprentices in a shipyard, 20 young people in a town or village, all want to advance in the world. Most of them hope to succeed. One of the salespeople will become a partner and make a fortune. One of the young people will find their vocation and succeed. But what happens to the other 19? They will fail, and some will fail spectacularly because they hope to succeed but aspire to nothing, content to live from day to day, putting in little effort and reaping the corresponding reward. Luck? There is no luck in this. It is almost as certain as the rule of 3. The young person who outpaces their competitors is the one who masters their affairs, lives within their means, saves the money they have left, maintains their reputation, dedicates their leisure hours to acquiring knowledge, and cultivates a pleasant attitude, thus gaining friends. There is much talk of luck, and if a man succeeds in business, it is said he is lucky. It is possible that he has worked for years with that goal in mind, dedicating all his energy to achieving it. He may have deprived himself of many things, and his seemingly sudden success may be the result of many years of hard work, but the world looks and says, he is lucky. Another man embarks on a complicated plan and fails. He is unlucky. Another man's nose is perpetually to the grindstone. He is also unlucky. It does not matter if he follows inclination rather than judgment. If he exercised half the judgment he possesses, he would know he is destined to fail. Yet he is never ready to attribute the failure to himself. He invariably attributes it to bad luck or blames someone else. Luck is a factor that does not exist in the race for success. Rufus Shaw once said, "There is little in the theory of luck that brings success to a man, but work guided by thought will move or pierce mountains." Carla said to him, "The man knows his work, then he does it." How often do we see the sign, "Gentlemen must not loiter in this room"? It is true, gentlemen never loiter, they work. Fireflies only shine in motion. Only the active will be chosen for positions of responsibility. That his ability is apparent is not a sign of luck. Tears of France were once complimented in this manner. "It's wonderful, Mr. President, how you deliver long impromptu speeches without having had time to think about them." His response was, "You are not complimenting me. It is criminal for a statesman to improvise speeches on public affairs. These speeches I have been preparing for 50 years. The remarkable response of Daniel Webster was the result of years of study on the question of states' rights. Professor Maury once told the following story. A few years ago, a young man entered a cotton factory and spent a year in the carding room. He then spent another year learning to spin and another learning to weave. He lodged with a weaver and frequently asked questions. Of course, he acquired all sorts of knowledge as he was educated in a good school and destined to be the best in his class. He became the superintendent of a small factory with a salary of $1,500 per year. One of the large factories in Fall River was lagging behind. Instead of making money, the company was losing it, and they needed a top-notch man to run the factory. They turned to a gentleman in Boston who was well acquainted with the leading men in cotton manufacturing. He told them that he knew a young man who would fit their needs, but that they would have to pay him a large salary. "What salary will he ask for?" "I cannot say, but I think he will require $6,000 per year." "That is a significant amount. We have never paid that much." "No, probably not. And you have never had a competent man. The condition of your factory and the story you have told me today show the result. I do not believe he will accept less, but I advise you to offer him that salary." The salary was offered, the man accepted, and they saved almost 40% of their manufacturing costs in the first year. He soon received an offer from one of the largest companies in New England, with a salary of $10,000 per year. Within less than a year at this company, he was offered another position for $15,000 per year. Now some might say, well, he was lucky. This gentleman was a friend who helped him get a good position. My dear, we have little patience for such comments. It is evident that this young man was determined to succeed from the start. He mastered his craft by taking his time and going all in. Once he had mastered his trade, his light began to shine. It is possible that this gentleman helped him secure a higher salary than he might have otherwise accepted, but it is also clear that his capability was apparent. The gentleman knew what he was talking about. The old proverb that circumstances make the man is simply a wolf in sheep's clothing. Whether a man is conditioned in high or low positions, in the city or the country, if he wants it, he will achieve it. Those who believe they can. Desires fail, but wills prevail. Work is luck. It is better to make our descendants proud of us than to be proud of our ancestry. There is hardly a conceivable obstacle to success that some of our successful people have not overcome. What man has done, man can do. Strong men have willpower, the weak have desires. In the struggle, wills prevail. Some writers would make men into mere sticks carried by the tide. We have seen that biography refutes this story. Willpower creates circumstances rather than being governed by them. Alexander Stevens, with a dwarf's body, accomplished the work of a giant. With a broken scythe, he surpassed those with fine reaping machines. The strength of will, guided by a tenacious mind, often achieves the desired result. Anyone can drift along, but it takes courage to counter an adverse current. A man fails and blames circumstances. In fact, too often he has yielded to luxuries beyond his means. A gentleman was once asked by a child who made him. The answer was, "God made me the size of a baby, and I grew the rest." The error of the little deist in omitting God from his growth illustrates a belief. We are what we make of ourselves. Garfield once said, "If the power to work hard is not a talent, it is the best possible substitute." Things do not appear in this world until someone makes them appear. A pound of courage is worth more than a ton of luck. Luck is a false light. You can follow it to ruin, but never to success. If a man possesses a skill reinforced by energy, he will not lack opportunities. The fortune of men depends so much on themselves that it is entirely legitimate to wonder how each can make or break their own happiness, achieve success, or attract the suffering of failure. Concentration of effort. The man who has no occupation finds himself in a sad situation. The man who lacks concentration of effort is in a worse one. In a recent test of the power of steel plates designed for ship armor, 1,000 cannons were fired simultaneously at them, but with poor results. Then, a large cannon was used. This cannon used only 1/10 of the powder of the combined force of the others, and yet, once the smoke cleared, it was found that the shot had penetrated the plate. 10 times the necessary powder was useless because the law of concentration had been ignored. One of the essential elements for success is concentration. Every young man must therefore determine early his strengths and discern, if possible, his essential aptitude for any vocation he may choose. A man may have the brightest talents, but if his energies are scattered, he will accomplish nothing. Emerson says that a man is like a piece of Labrador stone that does not shine when you turn it in your hand until it reaches a certain angle. Then it shows deep and beautiful colors. There is no universal adaptation or applicability in man. Dryden said, "What the child admires, the young man strives to obtain, and the man acquires. Is it not so? Do we not find Michelangelo neglecting school to copy drawings? Do we not find Henry Clay learning pieces to recite in the barn or cornfield? Yet, as Goethe says, we must beware of a talent we cannot hope to practice to perfection, no matter how well we may improve it. In the end, when the master's merit is evident, we will painfully regret the time and energy spent on such a fiasco. The man who wants to truly know something must have the courage to ignore 1,000 other things, no matter how attractive or desirable the urge to try them might be." P.T. Barnum, the showman who lost several fortunes but rose each time, paid off every dollar of his debt and is now a millionaire. He says in his lecture on the art of making money, "Be honest in everything you undertake. This integrity is what distinguishes the clumsy and incompetent mechanic from the remarkable worker." In the days when our country was new, there might have been an opportunity for a man who dedicated even a small corner of his brain to the profession he had chosen. But nowadays, with fierce competition, a thorough knowledge of the trade and sincere application are required to succeed. Stick to your trade, and you can be sure that your trade will stick to you, for directing all your mind and energy to a single point is what brings success. The first thing a young person must do after choosing their vocation is to be completely satisfied with their choice. They must be entirely content, or they will be beaten from the start. In reaching this decision, they must understand that if they want to find a vocation where everything is light, where clouds never darken the path, they must seek this vocation in another world. Such things are not found on earth. When we see Spurgeon, the great London preacher, influencing crowds, we might not imagine the time when, as a poor boy of barely 18, he began preaching on street corners to a crowd of ne'er-do-wells. Perhaps we would be willing to share in the fame he enjoys now, but we might balk at the pastoral visits he has to make each week. We would not oppose the fame of Webster, Calhoun, or Clay, but we might think it difficult to work night after night to acquire the knowledge that brought them that fame. How many of us would become weary in a short time? When one is satisfied with their vocation, they must work at it, if necessary, day and night, early and late, in time and out of time, without postponing what can be done now. The old proverb, "What is worth doing is worth doing well," has never been truer than today. Some people call for a redistribution of national wealth. They resemble the contemptible vagrant who said to the rich man, "I have discovered that there is enough money in the world for all of us if we share it equally. We need to do this and we will all be happy together." But the rich man replied, "If everyone were like you, everything would be spent in 2 months, and what would we do then?" "Divide again, of course," replied the vagrant. And yet a very considerable number of people think that this is the solution to the problem of work. The issue is that we need to distinguish the line between property rights and the evils of oppression. Every extreme is fatal. Education is undoubtedly the solution to the issue of labor. Listen, our country is the freest, greatest, and best governed of all the nations on earth. Yet, we spend annually $900 million on alcoholic beverages and only $85 million on education. Thus, while $1 is allocated to education and wealth, more than $10 is used to lead to ignorance, degradation, and need, more than 10 times the influence for evil than for good. Where is the remedy? Let Congress, which is supposed to manage our interests, legislate against ignorance and in favor of education. Suppose $900 million were used annually for education in universities for deserving young people of both sexes, and a fund for fresh air were established for children in our large cities who have never experienced its ennobling influence, but have only seen vice and degradation. $900 million in 1 year, $9 billion in 10 years. How many thousands of young people could attend university if each were assisted with $100 per year? If this amount were entirely devoted to this purpose, 9 million young people could be helped to attend university in 4 years. In 10 years, there would be 18 or 20 million university graduates from this one source. What would be the result? Also, suppose the money were dedicated to building suitable housing for people to live in. Consider the wonderful good that could be accomplished. I do not wish to give a dry lecture on temperance here, but the purpose of this work is to help others succeed, and if vice and drink were eliminated, there would be no need for further advice. There lies the root of the evil. Uproot it, pull it out, and trample it until it is dead. Do not allow it to take root again, and you can reasonably hope for some success. This chapter deals with the concentration of effort. Perhaps some might imagine that we have digressed. This is not true. The abolition of these vices contributes to concentration. Bad habits, regardless of their nature, lead to failure and tend to divert attention from one's own vocation. So the young person who wants to succeed must unite their heart, sympathies, and desires with what is right, lead a consistent and strictly temperate life, and devote all their influence to the measure, relying on the certainty that if they put their intentions into action, they will succeed in more ways than one. Self-reliance. Among all the elements of success, none is more essential than self-reliance, the determination to be your own assistant rather than depending on others. God never intended for strong, independent beings to grow by clinging to others like ivy to an oak for support. God helps those who help themselves. And how true is this old picturesque saying? Every young person must feel that their future happiness in life necessarily depends on themselves, on exercising their own energies more than on the patronage of others. A man is largely the arbiter of his own fortune. We are born with powers and faculties capable of almost anything, but it is the exercise of these powers and faculties that gives us skill and dexterity in everything. The greatest curse that can befall a young person is to rely, while their character is forming, on others. James A. Garfield is one of the greatest examples of the possibilities within our glorious republic. He once said, "The man who dares not follow his own independent judgment, but continually seeks advice from others, ultimately becomes a moral weakling and an intellectual dwarf. Such a man does not have his own being within himself, but goes like a supplicant to others and begs one after another to lend him theirs. He is, in fact, a mere element of a human being and is carried into the world as an insignificant figure, unless he happens to cling to some other floating elements with which he can form a kind of corporation resembling a man." The best capital with which a young person can start in life, 9 times out of 10, is robust health, good morals, fair ability, and a will of iron, reinforced by the willingness to work in an honest vocation. We have seen in the previous pages that the vast majority of our great men began life with these qualities and no others. The greatest heroes on the battlefield, the greatest speakers of ancient or modern times, were the children of obscure parents. The greatest fortunes ever accumulated on earth were the result of great effort. From Croesus to Astor, the story is the same. The oak that stands alone to battle the storm roots deeper and holds more firmly for future conflicts, while the forest tree, when the woodman's axe damages its surroundings, sways, bends, trembles, and may even be uprooted. The same goes for a person. Those who have been trained to rely on themselves are ready to face the hardest battles of life, while those who have always depended on their surroundings are never prepared to confront the storms of life that arise at any moment. How many young people hesitate and falter, believing that initial capital is necessary to begin? They think that a few thousand or even a few hundred in their wallet is all it takes to secure their fortune. What nonsense! Let the young person know now that they are unworthy of success as long as they hold such ideas. No man can achieve true success, however well positioned, if they rely only on themselves. Remember this. Does history not bear us out? We recall the adage, "Few children born with a silver spoon in their mouths achieve greatness." This does not mean that wealth is necessarily an obstacle to young people's success. On the contrary, we believe it can be of great help in certain cases and conditions. But for a long time, we have dismissed the idea that early wealth is a predetermined factor for success. If we were to give our impartial opinion, we would say that, for a vast majority of cases, it is a prerequisite for failure. If wealth is given to a young person, it too often destroys any confidence they might have had in themselves. Let that young person rather rejoice in the health and abilities given to them by God to exercise their capacities. The best type of success is not the one that comes by chance, for as it came by chance, it will disappear by chance as well. The wisest charity, in the vast majority of cases, is to help people help themselves. Need is very often the driving force that sets lazy energies in motion. Thus, we can easily see that poverty can be an absolute blessing for youth. A man's true position in the world is that which he achieves himself. How detestable does the British reverence for pedigrees seem to us? Americans revere achievements, and yet we tend towards the opposite. Society witnesses how it smiles and honors the $8 worker while frowning upon the $18 worker. This is a mistake. Work is work, and all work is honorable. It is not only a mistake, but a shame. It is better to make our descendants proud of us than to be proud of our ancestors. A name counts for what it does, not for what its fathers or friends have done. If the latter have given you a higher position, it is your shame to fall below that position. Self-reliance. The person who considers themselves above work and despises the worker is, in fact, one of the most contemptible creatures on God's earth. Not only does such a person display a dull intelligence regarding the nobler inspirations with which God has endowed us, but they also show a lack of common sense. The most noble thing in this world is work. Wise work brings order from chaos, builds cities, distinguishes barbarism from civilization, and brings success. No one has a right to fortune. One does not have the right to expect success unless they are prepared to work for it. A brother of the great orator Edwin, after listening to one of those eloquent speeches in Parliament and being observed deep in thought, was asked what he was contemplating. He replied, "I was wondering how Ned managed to capture all the talent in the family, but I remember that during his entire childhood while we played, he was dedicated to study." Ah, that's it. Moral or intellectual education must be primarily one's own work. Education is education no matter how it is obtained. We do not wish this to be understood as a disdain for the utility of colleges, but a mere university degree will not be much use to a young man, as we have said before. Education is valuable no matter how it is acquired. Studies like those of Webster and Greeley among the knotty pines of New Hampshire, and Thurlow Weed. Before the fire of the House of Knowledge, they are as precious once acquired as if they had the sensation of a university president. The world will only ask what I can do, and no university certificate will hold much significance. The question is that if a young man is not endowed with self-confidence and firm determination, universities will be of no help. But if he possesses these qualities, universities will propel him wonderfully. However, universities are not essential for success. An educated fool will never be a statesman. It is said that when John attended Yale University, he was ridiculed for his intense dedication to his studies. He replied, "Well, sir, I must make the most of my time so that I can perform well when I am in Congress." To this, a burst of laughter followed, awakening his Southern blood, and he exclaimed, "Do you doubt it? I assure you that if I were not convinced of my ability to reach the national capital, as a representative within the next 3 years, I would leave the university that very day." Although there might be some things in this speech that were perhaps inappropriate, the principle of self-confidence, this faith in oneself, this high aim in life, is undoubtedly the characteristic that earned Calhoun his splendid success. No young man will succeed if he does not cultivate a spirit of reasoning, if he is not original in his goals and designs. Witness the attempt by others to continue Stuart's enterprise. Not only did they have his experience, but also the benefit of his wealth. He succeeded without either. They failed with both. He was forced to establish an enterprise, while they benefited from his great patronage. It is said that a lawyer cannot be a merchant because while he is a lawyer, he thinks for himself. But when he is a merchant, he lets others think for him. A great manufacturer made kid gloves his specialty and achieved so much success that his brand today brings rat skins transformed into immeasurable value by any other talisman. The type of poor enterprise is the one that depends on the judgment of others. Nothing is more absurd than a man who hopes to reach the rank of a thundering Jupiter when he borrows all his thunder. Remember that the world truly crowns only those who have achieved their greatness by themselves. The economy of time, many jewels of pure, serene brilliance are found in the dark, unfathomable caves of the ocean. Many flowers are born to blush unseen and waste their sweetness in the desert air. How many young people, for whom nature has done so much, blush unseen and waste their abilities? Franklin said, "You love life, then do not waste time, for that is what life is made of." We have seen how Franklin used his time. Born the son of a soap maker, he lived to become one of our most remarkable philosophers, dying worth thousands. The advice of these men is convincing because we cannot help but feel that our possibilities are entirely equal to theirs. Gladstone, the most eminent Prime Minister of England, once said, Believe me when I tell you that the economy of time will reward you in the future life with interest. But its waste will make you decline until you sink into an unknown and dishonorable existence. Duelo was so poor in his childhood that he was delighted to use scraps of carpet to cover his almost frozen feet. With such footwear, he walked 2 miles to borrow a book on the French Revolution, which he studied while stretched out before the maple fire, observing how the sap buckets turned into maple sugar. This is how he laid the foundation for his education, which in the following years allowed him to wield a powerful influence, earning fame as a kingmaker. Helioburi, the son of a poor farmer and the youngest of 10 siblings, became an apprentice blacksmith at 18. He wanted to be learned and bought a few Greek and Latin books, carrying them in his pocket and studying them while working at the anvil. From there, he moved on to Spanish, Italian, and French. He always kept his text handy and improved during every free moment. He studied 7 languages in a single year, then taught for a year at school, but his health deteriorated, and he turned to the grocery business. Soon, the money he had was swept away by losses. At 27, he was seemingly at the end of his rope. How many would have given up? He left New Britain, his hometown, went to Boston, then to Worcester, where he started his trade again. His failure in business drew his attention to new studies. Now he was convinced of the path to take. His goal was set, and he devoted himself with great effort to achieving it. By 30, he mastered all European languages and turned to those of Asia, such as Hebrew, Syriac, and Chaldean. A wealthy gentleman offered him a course at Harvard University, but he preferred to work with his hands while studying. He then began giving lectures, and everyone was eager to hear the learned blacksmith. After a very successful tour, he returned to the anvil. He then visited Europe, became a warm friend of John Bridge and other eminent men, wrote books, gave lectures, edited newspapers, built a church, and organized meetings. He himself said, "It is not genius that wins, but hard work and a pure life." He chose only the best associates because he believed that a boy's companions have much to do with his success in life. At 68, he passed away, honored by 2 hemispheres. If our listeners want further proof of the effect of utilizing free moments, let them study the lives of men like Douglas, Lincoln, Grant, Garfield, Blaine, Cleveland, and others, too numerous to mention, and they will find that they were raised from the lowest ranks of life, but, by using every available minute, were able to achieve influence and utility. Thus, they turned the remnants of their own time into results of great value. 1 hour a day for 10 years will transform anyone from ordinary ability to learning. Think about it. 1 hour could easily be improved every evening, counting 300 days a year. In 10 years, you would have spent 3,000 golden hours. If you set yourself a specific goal, think about what you could accomplish. Then there are the Sundays dedicated to religious knowledge. One of the first things that one who wants to succeed must learn is time management. Lost wealth can be replaced by industry, lost health by hygiene, but lost time is lost forever. The most common excuse heard is, "I don't have time." They deceive themselves with the illusion that they would like to do this or that but cannot because they have no free time. Dear listener, have you ever thought that the more a person has to do, the more they believe they can accomplish? Look at the men in our own community who have done the most for humanity. They are the wealthy whose only apparent goal is to kill time. It is almost universally the overburdened class of workers who seem already overwhelmed with worries. These are men who find time to preside over public meetings and serve on committees. It is easier for an overworked man to do a little more than for a lazy person to get to work. A slight push will keep a hoop moving, but it takes a smart push to get it started. The busy man succeeds while others yawn and stretch with their eyes wide open. He will see the opportunity and seize it. Do not complain about not having free time. Be thankful not to be cursed with it. Yes, it is a curse 9 times out of 10. And think of the young person who goes to a vile place of entertainment to kill time. Then think of the young person who uses every night to acquire knowledge that will serve them in the journey of life. Also, think about the money you will save, for too often leisure is like a double-edged sword cutting both ways. Horace Greeley said, "Truly, if a man believes there is an easier way to earn $1 than to earn it directly, he has lost the key to his path through this mortal labyrinth, and will henceforth wander as chance dictates." Look around you at how many strive to enjoy all the good things of this world without exchanging the equivalent. They do business but are not content to wait patiently, adding $1 to another, thereby returning to humanity the equivalent of the wealth they seek. This excessive haste to get rich is one of the most frequent causes of failure. A young man who decides to work with determination and accumulate every legitimately possible dollar takes a step toward success. We do not disdain the desire to be someone in the world, but we firmly disapprove of the desire to acquire wealth through speculation or illicit means. We strongly advise all young people to choose a vocation, become masters of that vocation, and then pursue it until success is achieved, avoiding external operations. Another man who has spent his life trading stocks may succeed, but his is to remain true to his vocation until he achieves success, if necessary. Taylor was a prosperous merchant. He had long deposited with Citibank and was eventually appointed its president. The late Commodore Vanderbilt often tried to persuade him to participate in his grand speculations, but in vain. Finally, the crash of '57 arrived, and the bankers called a meeting to discuss the situation. Bank after bank reported having received returns of 60 to 90% of their notes. When Mr. Taylor was called upon, here's what he replied. This morning, Citibank had $400,000. Tonight we have $480,000. This was the kind of bank president that such principles made him. Nothing is more fatal to success than the desire to become rich suddenly. A businessman now counts his wealth in thousands but sees a great speculative opportunity. Is it a bit risky? Of course. But then the old adage comes into play. Never advance without hesitation. Suppose I might lose, but then all men are subject to losses in any venture. But I'm reasonably sure of making a huge sum. Why? Because would a millionaire do this or that? Thus, with such reasoning, he engages in a venture he doesn't understand and loses everything, as he would not approach it like those who have studied that venture for years and amassed a fortune. In this, men ruin themselves daily. How foolish a man becomes when he abandons a vocation in which he has achieved notable success to pursue a vocation that is, at best, uncertain and about which he knows nothing. Let me warn you once and for all, if you want to succeed, never engage in external operations, especially if they are speculative in nature. Choose a vocation, and if you stick to it, your vocation will stay with you. Frequent changes of enterprises are another cause of failure, but we have already discussed this topic thoroughly elsewhere in this text. Therefore, it seems superfluous to add more here. It is true that some men have seemingly succeeded by drifting. Dr. Adam Clark said the old adage about having too many irons in the fire conveys an abominable lie. Keep them all in the fire, pokers, tongs and all. But Dr. Clark seems to forget that most people who try to follow his advice burn their fingers or find that their irons cool down faster than they can use them. We cannot all be Clark, even if we try, and by following this method most of us will fail. But by following a consistent procedure we can ultimately succeed. Extravagance in life is another prolific cause of bankruptcy. A man imagines that renting a horse and strolling through the park will prove to people that he is as good as the neighbor who owns his own horse. He is deceived by the idea that such extravagance will place him on par with millionaires in the eyes of his peers. Dr. Franklin said that it is not our own eyes but those of others that ruin us. It is said that a merchant who could live on £500 a year 50 years ago now needs 5,000. In life, one must avoid the custom of saving being wise and spending being foolish. A man might believe he knows everything about economics, yet ignore its basic principles. For example, a businessman might keep all conceivable scraps of paper for writing, using all the dirty envelopes that come his way. This is done instead of using a neat letterhead and clean paper, with minimal extra cost, but with considerable gain in influence that the letter will have on others. A few years ago, a man spent the night at a farm. After tea, he was very eager to read, but could not due to the lack of light from a candle. Seeing his dilemma, the hostess said to him, "It is quite difficult to read here at night. The proverb says you need a boat at sea to light 2 candles at once." To her, the idea of wasting 2 candles at once would seem as absurd as throwing a $5 bill into the fire. This woman might save $5 or $6 a year, but the knowledge she thus denied her children would surely surpass a ton of candles. But this is not the worst. The businessman, by this costly frugality, consoles himself by thinking he is saving. Since he saved a few dollars on stationery, he feels justified in spending 10 times that amount on frivolities. The man thinks he is economical. The woman is an economical woman. She knows she is economical. Having saved $5 or $6 this year on candles, she therefore feels justified in buying some useless adornments that can only please the eye. She is sure she understands economy while starving herself to dress her body with trinkets, like the man who could only afford a penny herring for his dinner but hired a carriage and 4 to take him home, saving on a small scale and wasting on a large scale. Today we use kerosene and thus our light is good and cheap, but at first use old clothes until you can afford new ones. Never wear clothes that you owe to someone. Live with a simpler diet if necessary. Grilly said, "If I had only 50 cents a week to live on, I would buy an ear of corn and roast it rather than owe $1 to anyone." The young person who follows this principle will never be forced to live on dry corn. Few people keep a detailed account of their expenses. Wasters never like to keep accounts. Buy a book, note each night your daily expenses in the columns, one titled Needs, the other Luxuries, and you will find that the second column will be at least double the first, and in some cases exceed it tenfold. It is not the necessary purchases of life that ruin people, but the most senseless expenditures we imagine necessary for our comfort. Living on credit is the greatest folly. It is a wickedness. Yet, a gentleman recently told the writer that he personally knew a priest who had been preaching for years with a salary exceeding $700 a year, and recently with $1,500 a year. Yet, this man of the gospel now owes his university debts to someone who lent him money to go to school and has never been able to repay it. Although he practiced the strictest economy, this man knows nothing about the basic principles of economics. In my opinion, there are many priests who will have to answer for the sin of extravagance, and many more who will answer for the sin of laziness. The Bible says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but part of the commandment is often lightly omitted. Many priests would be horrified if asked to do work on the 7th day, but they would also be horrified if accused of sinning by attending to an external business, thus neglecting all their work during the other 6 days. God gives us ample time to do our work, and it is a sin to neglect anything. God expects a man to choose a calling, and also expects that man to master that calling and do his best to excel in it. No priest can devote 4 days of the week to external work and spend the remaining 2 days seriously preparing for Saturday's work. This is due to 2 reasons. First, it neglects the law of concentration, dividing his mind and thoughts, thus losing strength and influence. Second, God only approves of our best effort. This preacher will spend an hour delivering a 25-minute sermon and then complain that people are not interested in his sermons. We do not justify Sabbath violations or lack of religious interest, but the preacher who is not ready to take responsibility for such a state of affairs is lacking somewhere. We talk about the clergy simply to illustrate our point on this matter. The same rule applies to lawyers, doctors, merchants, mechanics, artists, or workers. If I were a stonemason building a stone wall, I would study my work and push myself so vigorously that soon I would be, if not the best, at least one of the best workers you could find anywhere. Strive to be an authority. Missed opportunities are the root of thousands of failures. A recent article claims that 9 out of 10 of our young lawyers fail due to a lack of study. Here's a thought for the clerk who thinks he should have a better position. Of course, circumstances must be considered, but the determined man bends circumstances to his will. A man imagines he is capable of holding a higher position than the one he occupies. He imagines himself to be a Webster, a Lincoln, a Garfield, a Spurgeon, but he waits in vain for circumstances to favor his deserved promotion. Note that Spurgeon was raised to prominence and placed in the chair he now occupies, not because he was inferior to other preachers, but because he was original. He borrowed nothing from anyone. He did his best, adapted to his place, and knelt before God. People bowed before him, pleading with him to take the Playmobil church. They recognized the need for concentration, and although they are sometimes seen in other areas, it was only after they had mastered their first enterprise. Helio Burid mastered more than 40 different languages one by one. The author learned a lesson in his youth that has always been of inestimable benefit to him. In subsequent lessons, fractions would start, something we had never tackled before. We began to go through that part of the book, and soon became fully convinced that we could never master its complexities, and we were immediately discouraged. Returning home in the evening, he spoke of his discouragement when his father began to work, explaining the basic principles step by step. The stubborn principles were mastered, and today, if there is a part of mathematics in which he excels, it is in fractions. Never cross bridges before you come to them. A man should plan ahead but must be optimistic rather than overconfident. He should never borrow trouble and should avoid all extremes. Another cause of failure is the habit of endorsing without security. No one should ever endorse someone's paper without a guarantee or equivalent. I argue that no one has the right to ask you to endorse his paper unless he can dance for you or provide a good guarantee. Of course, there are cases where a young brother who cannot provide a guarantee can be helped in business, but his habits must be his guarantee, and his duty is to have made his previous life a guarantee of his ability to run the business safely. But even in such cases, a man's primary duty is to his family, and he should never endorse even his brother's paper for an amount he reasonably considers he could lose. A man may run a successful manufacturing business. Another man comes to him and says, "You know I am worth $20,000 and I do not owe a dollar currently. My money is all invested in my business, which you also know is currently in a prosperous situation. Now, if I had $5,000 today, I could buy a lot of goods and double my money in a few months. Would you endorse my promise to pay for that amount?" You think he is worth $20,000, and thus he runs no risk in endorsing his promise to pay. Of course, he is your neighbor. You want to do him a favor, so you give him your name without taking the precaution to insure. Shortly after, he shows you the cancelled promissory note and tells you, probably sincerely, that he achieved the expected profit from the transaction. He thinks he has done you a service, and this thought comforts him. He may not think about the fact that he could have failed for every dollar he was worth and lost $5,000. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. He may forget that he risked $5,000 without even the prospect of a single cent in return. This is the worst kind of risk. But let's consider once again. He asks you for the same favor and you agree once more. He has ingrained in his mind the impression that he is perfectly safe in endorsing his notes without security. This man gets money too easily. All he has to do is present the note at the bank, and since both you and he are considered reliable, he gets his money. He obtains money for the moment effortlessly. Now, look at the result of a speculative opportunity outside his business, and he only needs a temporary investment of $10,000. He is confident that he will recover even before the note is due. He puts the amount before him and signs mechanically, being firmly convinced that his friend is perfectly responsible. He endorses his notes as if it were the most natural thing, but the speculation does not go as planned. However, all is well. All that is needed is another $10,000 note to replace the previous one at the bank. Before that can happen, the speculation turns into a total loss. His friend does not tell you that he has lost half of his fortune. He does not even tell you that he speculated. But now he is completely enthusiastic, seeing people around him making money. Rarely do you hear about the losers. He searches for his money where he lost it, managing to get you to endorse other notes at different times with various excuses until he suddenly realizes that his friend has lost all his fortune, and his own as well. But he does not reflect on the fact that, in the same way, he has ruined himself. All this could have been avoided with a chivalrous yet businesslike attitude from the start. If you had said, "You are my neighbor, and of course if my name can be useful to you at the bank, you can have it. All I ask for is a guarantee. I have no doubt about you or your plan, but I always request a guarantee when I offer a service, and I assume you would do the same." If he had simply asked for a guarantee, he would not have gone so far, and very likely would not have speculated at all. What the world demands are men who believe that justice must prevail in all business transactions. How many men would not waste another man's property, but waste their own families? We need more men who recognize the demands of justice for their own family, as well as for others. Men who have the common sense to understand that it is possible to cheat both one's own family and one's neighbor. Another frequent cause of failure is the neglect of one's own business. There are many reasons for this. One thing is certain. A man will attend to his business in proportion to the interest he takes in it. This applies to all vocations, whether in professions, business, or manual labor. If we see a man playing checkers day after day in a local shop, although the game itself is not harmful, It is always a mistake for that man to waste precious time. Then there is billiards and pool. How many young people have been ruined for life and perhaps condemned forever just for starting a downward spiral in the billiard hall? And what is curious is the particular fascination for billiards that cannot be described. Of course, it's just a game for cigars. Yes, that's it. Unfortunately, one habit leads to another. The young man smokes, comes in, and during a night of fun, wins 15 or 20 cigars. He argues that he has obtained smoking material for 2 or 3 days or a week for nothing. But listen, he plays billiards for 10 cents a game. And if he wins, his opponent pays. If he loses, he pays. Each game is distinct and has no connection with the previous games. Now, if he plays and wins 2 or 3 games in a row, he is constantly losing. Each game he loses represents 10 cents that he cannot recover. If he plays 25 games, which good players quickly do in an evening, and he wins 2 out of 3, he will have lost at least 80 cents. If he wins 24 out of 25, he will lose 10 cents. Don't you see that the odds are against the player? Have you ever heard of a man who makes anything playing billiards or pool, unless he is in the business? You have personally seen many young men who work every day and admit to having spent from $100 to $1,000 over the 3 to 5 years they have been playing. Now, why do some succeed while others fail? There is one thing that no one naturally likes, except a worm, and that is tobacco. Yet how many people cultivate this unnatural habit, being very aware that its use is harmful, and that it is harder to learn to enjoy it than to enjoy castor oil? Nevertheless, they persist until they learn to desire it. Young people regret not being adults. They would like to go to bed as children and wake up as adults. Little Charlies and Harrys see their parents or uncles smoking. If one does not see someone's father or uncle smoking in the street, the children console themselves by thinking that it is one of the essential things to be a man. Thus, they get a pipe and fill it with tobacco. And like their parents, instead of gradually insisting to earn their affection by teaching them to hate evil, they explode and say, "I'll whip you if I see you doing that again." So little Charlies and Harry sneak behind the barn and light up suddenly. Charlie says, "Do you like it, Harry?" And the boy replies sadly, "Not really." He knows it is bitter and soon makes a sacrifice at the altar of fashion. But the boys stick with it and eventually even conquer their appetites, learning to prefer cigars to the most delicious peach. I speak from experience, as I once took the most pride when I had a cigar or a mixture of 5 or 10 cents. But that time is fortunately past for me. I also do not see a poor office worker wandering the street smoking a cigar, knowing he cannot afford it. But I recall what a man once said about a cigar. "It's a roll of tobacco with fire at one end and an idiot at the other. A cigar excites the desire of another, from which the habit develops in a person." These observations apply with 10 times more force to the use of intoxicating substances. For even if a man is blessed with intelligence, if his brain is muddled and his judgment distorted by intoxicating drinks, it will simply be impossible for him to succeed, at least to his full potential. Speakers have talked for years about the degradation and need that social drinking brings us. Countless stories of men who have abandoned everything they loved in this world to satisfy these unnatural desires have been told. One accepted habit leads to another. We have seen how even the innocent habit of smoking can influence a young person to take the next step. Once in the billiard hall, it is not difficult to see how youths can be led to drink. First one thing, then another. And we won't even mention cards, card games, or compulsive gambling, which are merely the natural results of these other evils. They tend to accompany them, and where one is found, the other is often present as well. The pathologist can tell more about the consequences of bad habits than I can to those who might be as unfortunate today as to be under the spell of any habit. Let me tell you that you can overcome this habit and learn to despise it as well. Young man, you desire to be rich and successful, but you disdain the fundamental principles of success, and that is why you fail. Why would you not? It is as if you were trying to build a good house without a foundation. You desire to gain wealth, but you spend 20 cents every day on one extravagance or another, which, with interest, will amount to more than $19,000 by the end of 50 years. Reflect on this when you wish to be rich again, and then pull 10 cents from your pocket in the form of a cigarette and burn it. Just let the thought pass through your mind, "What foolishness I am committing every day." A man recently told the writer that he spent $1 every day on treats and smoking. He is an ice merchant in New York and has had a good business for 30 years. I cannot say how long he has spent this $1 a day, but I know that $1 earned each day with interest will make a man worth more than $475,000 in 50 years. In 25 years, the average person wastes enough for any family to be comfortable. Pennies are squandered in the desire to obtain dollars. These dollars are not as essential to success as the pennies. The old adage, "Honesty is the best policy," is surely true in more than one way, as there is more than one way to succeed in this world. A man can achieve national honor and still have little wealth in this world. Many congressmen with little money, and sometimes feeling the need for money, would not trade places with a Rothschild. But it is not necessary to be a Rothschild or a Webster to succeed. I wonder if a man who has lived entirely for himself is happy, even if he is as rich as Croesus or as honorable as Demosthenes. Therefore, let us not lose sight of the fundamental law of success. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Put yourself in their place. What is success? It is giving the best of ourselves. It is maximizing our abilities. If we do not, we sin and miss the goal of earthly happiness, and it is too late. Not because time is a fiction and does not limit fate, only thought is eternal. Time vainly grasps at the rising thought that aspires to return to the pure source of the spirit.